Hi all, welcome to Sustainable Fashion Pills, a podcast produced for the European Erasmus Plus project Sustainability, Fashion and Employability Skills during a 3-year period from 2020 to 2023.
Hello, I'm Eva, a management student from University of Madeira. We are from the Erasmus Plus project called SFES, Sustainable Fashion Employability Skills. In this podcast, we are going to talk about the development of local sustainable economies, and for that we have a special guest that is an expert on this topic, Mark Hogarth, the creative director of Harris Tweed Hebrides. Thank you so much for coming. Let's get started. So, in terms of sustainability in all dimensions, why do you think it's important to have local companies' economies?
Local companies are important beyond actually being successful in terms of sustaining a profit margin, which allows for investment. It's about more than this. It's about employment. It's about actually having something that is integrated with the local society, with the local community. This is particularly important in the Outer Hebrides of Scotland because Harris Tweed provides an employment opportunity. It stops out migration. It has a very skilled set of labour which allows it to sustain itself. So even before you get to the definition of what Harris Tweed is as a product, it has the advantage of sustaining the local community, sustaining the culture of the Outer Hebrides of Scotland. And I think that is the same in Madeira as well, where you have an intrinsic link between traditional craft, in the case of embroidery, and also some of the food and drinks that are produced by the island, in particular Madeira wine.
The fashion industry is responsible for about 1.2 billion tons of greenhouse gases per year. So the main responsible for this is the transportation of the items. With that being said, what do you think that can be done to decrease this impact?
We are in a stage of globalization, some might say advanced globalization, where supply chains have been stretched to the point of getting the exact product to the exact place at the exact time. The negative dimension of that is, of course, the carbon that is induced by this process. There's two ways to approach this. Either we produce less, or we actually look where we produce and how we produce. I think producing less in the short term is a very, very difficult task, but hopefully it will come to bear at some point. I think the more interesting way to have a positive impact on the global emissions is to look at how we actually produce the items. That would mean possibly producing items with a tighter supply chain, closer to your market, or indeed closer to the actual production level as well. It's not going to reverse overnight, but I am a strong believer in quality over quantity. I also believe, particularly in the context of fashion, that we must, and I'm very, very passionate about this, we must educate on overconsumption, which has been allowed to really get out of control. You know, as consumers, as people, we're buying too much because it's too easy. That's not necessarily our fault. But on the other hand, I think it's very, very important that we have to consider legislating on overproduction. In the same way that radically in the 1950s or the 1960s, legislation was put in place with cigarettes, which were damaging people's health. I think we have to legislate on the overproduction of clothing, which is quite clearly scientifically being proven to damage the environment.
Finally, which skills do you think are required to keep a local company like Harris Tweed or Madeira Embroidery going?
It's a really, really good question, and it's no simple answer because every rural economy, every island economy has its own set of conditions which are very challenging. I mean, this beautiful island of Madeira, it's a volcanic island, it's very mountainous, but it has some rich resources. So you've got a positive dimension. But more importantly, you have to make a product that's of the highest quality, sometimes even better quality than what you might get in more traditional markets. There has to be a competitive advantage, and there has to be a great brand story. If you focus on these two things, whereby you get your product perfect, and then when you take it to market, you produce this great story, as the case of the Madeira Embroidery company here in Madeira. Obviously with the Madeira wine, there's a genuine heritage that you just cannot invent. And you put that forward, then you have a distinct advantage. And that's always been the case for companies like Harris Tweed, or some of the fine silks and cotton companies that you get in France, Spain, and other parts of Europe. It's about really investing in the skills to make sure that that industry can still attract young people, and you keep a nice balanced demography. It's a very, very difficult scenario sometimes, because markets dictate that a certain product might be out of fashion. But I'm a great believer that fashions, by their very nature, come round, and if you focus on making the product perfect, you will prevail.
Thank you, Mark, for your time. It was an honor having you with us today, and thank you for all you listening.
Absolute pleasure. Thank you.
This SFES project is coordinated by Glasgow Caledonian University, and it involves other academic partners such as Universidad Villanueva in Madrid, Universidad Politécnica in Valencia, EDHEC Business School in France, and Universidad de Madeira in Portugal. It also includes industry partners such as Harris Tweed Hebrides, the Textile Group, and the fashion conglomerate Tendern Group in Spain. The objective is to improve employability and entrepreneurship skills in the fashion sector around sustainability, and to broaden knowledge for academia, companies, and fundamentally for students involved in the project.